body was made of scraps of skin and meat, and in some places her bones were visible. I looked and looked into her eyes, and pity pierced me for her.
Hi. I am a regular student. My name is Tim and I am going to tell you about how my life has changed and of course now it won't be the same. As usual, I was standing at the bus stop to go to school. It was terribly cold outside. People, wrapped in a sea of clothes and hiding their faces behind huge scarves, stood waiting for the bus. I was in the midst of this crowd, when suddenly, from the opposite side of the road, I felt a palpable warmth and the smell of rot. I turned toward the bus stop, but saw nothing suspicious. Then that warm breeze blew in again. I looked around at the people standing next to me. They were shaking with cold, and I was unbearably hot. I must have looked like a fool, unbuttoning my jacket in the cold. When I turned around again, I suddenly noticed a girl. She was facing me, wearing a purple sundress, all tattered. Her knees were ragged, and through her short, pulled forward hair was a mess of blood and meat. It wasn't a face. It really was a mess. I stood and watched. Some people say they can move in such unexpected cases. But in my case there was none of that. I could have turned away. I could have walked. I could have run. But I didn't want to do that. I looked at the girl, waiting to see what would happen next. She was looking at me, and I could smell the stink of rot that almost made me turn inside out. But I held on. She took a step, then another, and began to cross the road. My eye began to twitch. She was getting closer, and then I saw a car coming at her. I had already started to reach out my hand and open my mouth to yell, "Stop!" The car ran over her and sped on. It went right through her, and the girl disappeared as if she hadn't existed. That is when I threw up. Right into the woman standing next to me. I'll never forget the evil look in her eyes. I ran out of there and headed for my house. The smell of corpse was still in my nose. I ran up the stairs, climbed to the 3rd floor, and opened the door of my apartment. Once inside, I slid down the wall and sat on the floor. What the hell was that all about? No one had seen it. Just me. If I told anyone, they'd think I was crazy. I was sitting there, staring at one point, when it was as if I felt someone's light breath on my neck. I got up immediately, reassuring myself that it was self-inflicted. I went into the bedroom, kicked off my shoes and jacket, and lay down on the bed. I fell asleep that way. When I opened my eyes, the clock was already 3 o'clock. I looked at my phone. There were 7 missed calls from my friend, a classmate. He and I had rented an apartment together. He wasn't in the apartment right now. He must have slept over at his girlfriend's place. I heard a noise coming from the bathroom. I thought it was Oleg. But when I came out of the room, I couldn't see any light from under the bathroom door. And the sounds came more and more clearly, as if someone was hitting the wall with his fist. Trying not to panic and approaching the bathroom door with determination, I turned on the light, opened the door, and just collapsed on the floor. There she was. The same girl. She was facing the wall, banging her head against it. There were distinct blood stains on the wall. The mess on her face looked even worse than before. I stood up, reached for the light switch, turned off the lights, crawled slowly away from the bathroom, and into the kitchen. There I stared into the darkness and suddenly saw her eyes gleam in the darkness. She was coming toward me. She came very close, bent down, and her face was right in front of mine. I turned away and covered my mouth with my hand. Somehow I knew she wouldn't do anything to me. The fear slowly faded, and I turned toward her. Lifting my hand, I fumbled for a switch and turned on the light. She hadn't disappeared. I was even surprised. After all, in ghost stories they disappear when you turn on the light. She was still standing there, leaning toward me. Her face, as I said, was horrible, and her body was as if made of scraps of skin and meat, bones visible in places. I looked and looked into her eyes, and pity pierced me for her. She did not look away. I reached my hand out to her. As I touched her, I realized that she was quite real. She was material, and so was I. I took her by the shoulders, put my arm around her, and rested her head in my lap. She lay there obediently, unmoving. I stroked her hair, dirty with blood, and fell asleep. I opened my eyes at the sound of the door slamming shut. My friend came back. He came into the kitchen, dropped the bag of groceries and rushed to me. I was covered in blood, but the blood was not mine. I knew whose it was, but he didn't. My arms, my face, my legs, my neck were all covered in blood. I had clumps of her hair on my hands. A trail of blood led from the bathroom to the kitchen. To me, there was a blood stain on the bathroom wall. The blood stain from her forehead pounding into it, calling to me, "Silly." I grinned sadly, and Oleg didn't understand what had happened. We went to the bus stop, and I told him everything. He believed me. We stood, and I looked ahead to that very stop. I was waiting for her to show up. We stood there most of the day. It was getting dark, and Oleg, angry and hungry, was about to carry me home, when a man appeared at the stop with a bunch of artificial flowers. He put them on the ground and said something. Oleg looked at him and twirled his finger at his temple, and I headed toward the man. Oleg tugged at my sleeve, but I threw his hand away. When I approached the man, he was standing with his head down, as if he was talking to someone invisible. I knew who he was talking to. At that moment I thought it was the girl's father. But as I found out a little later, it wasn't he. I touched him on the shoulder. He turned around and tears glistened on his cheeks. He quickly wiped them away. It turned out that today was exactly 2 months since the girl had died. He was an ordinary bus driver. He was driving home on a dark evening and didn't notice a girl crossing the road. The bus caught the back bumper on her sundress and dragged her across the asphalt for 300 meters. Then it stopped. But the girl's body already looked like a piece of meat. He was not drunk and did not leave the scene of the accident, but took her to the hospital. There he told in tears what he had done. Doctors with a gurney rushed to the bus. The man opened the door, and there was no one inside. Not even a drop of blood. After wagging their fingers at his temple, the doctors advised him to drink less. The depressed driver drove home. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, he heard knocks in the bathroom. He went into the bathroom and saw what I saw. I listened to the driver's story and understood nothing. Who was this girl? Why, when she was hit by a car at the bus stop, did she disappear like a ghost? And why was I able to touch her in my apartment, like a living person? Oleg and I walked home, I thought, and he just walked beside me. Both were silent all the way home. A month later I came to the bus stop with flowers, put them on the pavement, and stood there for a long time, hoping to see that girl again. I stood there all night. It was getting light. But she wasn't there. She never showed up. I wondered why the driver didn't come with flowers today, too. I was beginning to forget the story. But one evening the doorbell rang when I wasn't expecting anyone. Glancing at the calendar, I somehow suddenly remembered that today was exactly 4 months since the accident on the road. I went to the door, but stopped when I heard a knock on the bathroom door. Smiling, I made my way to the bathroom and opened the door. There my friend was hanging in a noose. His legs were convulsing against the wall. I got him off as fast as I could. But it was too late. I hugged him in horror, as I had hugged her then. What had she done to him? After that terrible day, I somehow made it through the month. I was no longer carrying flowers to her, but to my friend. After a month, sitting alone in my apartment, I was afraid to hear the knocking in the bathroom again. I was afraid she would come after me. After all, she had taken the driver, that's why he hadn't come with flowers then. She killed him. And she killed my friend. The time was nearing 3 o'clock at night. My heart was beating faster. I looked at my watch. 2:59. The minute lasted an eternity. There was that pounding again. She came in. I didn't go to the bathroom. I lay on a bed, staring at the ceiling. 3:05. The sound got louder and louder. But after 15 minutes, it stopped abruptly. Then I heard a scream. She was screaming, "Why won't you come to me? Take me to you. Hold me in your arms." I plugged my ears, unable to stand it. The bathroom door opened quietly. I heard the slow footsteps of bare wet feet. She was coming toward me. I went numb with Ferno. I really couldn't move. She appeared in the doorway. Blood dripped from her forehead onto the floor. She had hit the wall so hard that she had smashed her forehead all the way to her skull. There must have been a lot of blood on the bathroom floor. And she was standing in that puddle with her bare feet. And now she was walking toward me, leaving red marks. I closed my eyes so I wouldn't see her. She sat down on the bed, lay down, put her arms around me. She was breathing right into the back of my neck, and her arm wrapped around me. I looked at her arm, rotted almost to the bone, and I felt sick. It smelled like dead meat. Somehow fresh. Like she hadn't died 5 months ago. But just today that damn driver had dragged her across the pavement. She clutched me tightly, not wanting to let go of her rotten hands. I knew it wasn't her fault that she was half alive and half out there. It was my own fault that she was coming to me. But it's not like she's killing me. Like she killed the driver or Oleg, she just needs someone around. Reconciled, I turned to her and already wanted to hug her. But she was gone. For a long time I didn't dare get up. In the morning I found bloody footprints on the floor, leading from the bathroom. There I was greeted by a puddle of blood that had almost dried up. I moved out of the apartment without saying anything about the story to the landlords. I didn't carry any more flowers to that stop. But that was the day Oleg died. And I have to go to the cemetery with flowers for him. And sometimes, when I stand over his grave, I feel how she hugs me from behind with her bloody arms. How she breathes in my back at the bus stop with her grave breath. How the breeze on this very day brings the smell of fresh dead meat.
If you liked the story, please subscribe and like. Till tomorrow.